456, that great book that was published not in America, was published in exile in England, because he broke with Jargon Correns Press. They couldn't get the letting, they couldn't get the space, and he finally said, well, he's not going to do it with the Willans brothers. And it took him 5 years to set it up. It was, he finished Maximus 456 in '63, wasn't published until '68, and it was finally Jeremy Prynne who came over from Cambridge. Olson was in England, and Jeremy Prynne was in the fort, and he cut it up, because in those days you didn't write it out on a computer. You have to paste it up, and Jeremy put it on the page the way Charles wanted it, with the space. The map, the page, the text is a map. So I wanted to do the same thing in all area. And of course, I got into trouble with that. I talked to George, and he said, I wanted to do Pleistocene Man. He said, sure. I thought he was the executive of the state, give me permission. And it went to press, and the day before I was going to get the books from the printer, I get this telegram from Jack Clark saying, you do not have permission, he sent me a telegram, you do not have, stop presses, you do not have permission for Pleistocene Man. The copyright is Institute for Further Studies. I called him up, the phone was off the hook. What could I do? He wrote a lovely poem about all area, which is a child, he called me a child piling up idealism, ideal belief. Olson said it at Berkeley. He was talking about, he said, you have to hang out with poets to get your brains handed to you sometimes. Did you see that swipe about Oppenheimer in Leroy Jones's The Dutchman? Well, that's true. You had to. These guys were scary, and you had to, force your way in there. But at Berkeley, I got, and again, nothing was available on Penn Sound in those days. I wrote to University Extension in Berkeley, and they sent me the reel-to-reel 2 hours of the Berkeley lecture. I had never heard his voice, although I had heard it, the resonance of it ringing in my soul. And when I heard the voice, yes, it was the voice that I had heard. And the wonderful thing about the Berkeley lecture that Anne has talked about, and people who were there, is that he got up and he talked. He started talking, and he started singing, Katie. I mean, it was here's to Jimmy Savile, who got his leg shot off. And that's what they'll do to you in America. They'll take everything away from you. It was wonderful. But of course, he started out with, for me, one of the great song-like poems of Olson is The Ring of, and I'd like to just read it. And I'd like to read it twice, because the wonderful thing about Olson was he was an extraordinary reader of his own poetry, but as we know, he also got cranky. He was burdened. Sometimes he'd lose the rhythm of the poem. At Brandeis, he was trying to read, and finally he just pushed back from the lectern and said, I'm not going to read from you. Your minds are so totally rationalized, you don't even have ears to hear what I'm trying to do. He felt it in the air, and also the famous reading at Harvard, where Harry Levin was in the audience, and he was, stuttering around, and finally he said, Harry, could you remove yourself?
Excuse yourself.
Well, excuse me, could you excuse yourself? Harry, this is Harry Levin. He did, and then he got the reading on. And after, at the party, Olson rushed up and said, Harry, it wasn't because I didn't want you there, it's just that your presence brought back all of Harvard to me, and I was sunk into this extraordinary, this sadness, and I couldn't read if you were going to be in the room. You were sucking out my soul. So, there's The Ring of. It was the west wind caught her up as she rose from the genital wave, and bore her from the delicate foam home to her isle. And those lovers of the difficult, the hours of the golden day, welcomed her, clad her, were, as though they had made her, were wild to bring this new thing, born of the ring of the sea, pink and naked, this girl brought her to the face of the gods, violets in her hair, beauty, and she said no to Zeus and them all one not. Or was it she chose the ugliest to bed with? Or was it straight and to expiate the nature of beauty? Was it, knowing ours anyway, she did not stay long, or the lame was only one part, and the handsome Mars had her, and the child had that name, the arrow of, as the flight of, the move of his mother who adorneth, with myrtle the dolphin and words. They rise, they do who are born of like elements. Once is enough. Thank you.